Hey y'all, I am Brittany Mingo and I am very excited to welcome you to our first episode of Let's Talk About It with Mingo. Today, our guest is Dr. William Hayes. Dr. Hayes is a powerhouse. He is an educator and motivational speaker, and today we're just going to have a real conversation. And so, before we begin, I'm going to invite Dr. Hayes to share some information about himself.
Oh, we're just going to jump right in there. Okay. I am Dr. William Hayes, originally from Hartsville, South Carolina, currently a chief executive officer of an all-male school in Philadelphia, and also a speaker and consultant.
What's the all-male school?
Boys Latin of Philadelphia.
Boys Latin.
The Warriors.
The Warriors.
Yes.
Okay, the Warriors. You have this thing with Warriors.
Yes.
For those who don't know, Dr. Hayes is also my former employer. He was the principal of Mastery High School of Camden, and I was the college advisor, and we were the Warriors. All right, so before we begin, I just want to ask you a question. You go to Starbucks?
No, I don't go to Starbucks. Dunkin' is on my way between home and work, so I go there. And if I'm feeling like making a drive, I'll go to Wawa.
Okay, what's your order at Dunkin'?
Don't judge me. It is the same.
No
thing.
judgment. Say
it's
please.
The same thing every day. Well, when there's pumpkin spice coffee,
okay,
I'm gonna get that. A sausage, egg, and cheese wrap with a glazed donut.
Okay, pumpkin spice sausage, egg, and cheese wrap.
Yes, wrap.
Okay, with a
lower calories, so that I can get
the donut.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. A man of balance.
Yes.
So you think things through.
Yes.
You're strategic. Okay, that's great. So, Dr. Hayes, you said you are from South Carolina, and so from my knowledge of you, you grew up in South Carolina, then you attended Morehouse University.
Morehouse College.
You are absolutely right. You know, I know your Morehouse brothers get
Yes.
Morehouse College.
Clarity is kind.
Morehouse College. You graduated from there and you went to Harvard.
Yes.
And then Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Okay. So these are all very different sectors of life. And so it shows that you have intersectionality. And typically when we look at Black men, there are Black men that come from those specific spaces. But you have been able to navigate spaces where people predominantly look like you, talk like you, have your same experiences. And then you've gone to places where people don't look like you and share your culture. How has that shaped you as an educator and a motivational speaker?
So I think it's definitely broadened my perspective, not only just for different races and cultures, but also within the Black community. And so one of the things that people don't often know is that when I was in first through third grade, my mother had a job with IBM. And so we lived in Long Island, New York, Westbury, first through third grade. And I was actually the only Black student in my class. And so that informed just my perception of Blackness in the context of whiteness. Then she lost that job. And so we moved to South Carolina, which Southern racial dynamics are very different from Northern racial dynamics.
Right.
I go off to Morehouse, which is an all Black male school, go over to Harvard. And so in each of those spaces, it's really just been an opportunity for me to renegotiate my own identity in a new context and what it means to exist next to other cultures.
And so have you always known that you wanted to be an educator when you were in these spaces? Did you go to Morehouse with the goal and the passion to teach?
Absolutely not. I come from a family of educators. So my mother was a Head Start director. My grandmother was a 7th grade math teacher. My aunt was a 4th grade teacher. And so we are an education family, right? And so, but I graduated, got a scholarship to Morehouse, and amongst the Black community, if you are a smart Black man, you do not go to school to teach. You go to school to become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, something that's going to make you rich. And so I did that. And then I got to sophomore year, biology and chemistry, and realized, don't want to do this. Not my calling to be a medical doctor, but it is. I wanted to be a pediatrician, and so I kind of pivoted to go into counseling. Was originally the focus once I graduated. So my master's is in risk and prevention counseling, and that was the step into education.
So you said something interesting that I do want to talk about, and we don't have to go too deep into it, but I do want to put a pin in it because you mentioned that smart Black boys don't go to school to teach. And so there's this expectation that if you're a smart African-American boy, there are certain career paths that you should be interested and should take. How did that pressure feel? How did you feel with that pressure of knowing this is the expectation, but this is what I'm called to do?
I'm not quite sure I I can recognize it in retrospect as pressure. I'm not sure I saw it as pressure in that way when I was going through it or coming up. All I knew is I didn't want to be poor anymore. Okay. And that there were certain careers, there were certain majors that would lead me to a career, a job that would give me the income to not be poor anymore. And teaching wasn't one of those things that was on the list of I'm not gonna be poor no more.
Right.
Right. But
not immediately.
Not immediately.
I know you're not poor.
But God is blessing. There is a path through education.
Okay. So I think that's significant because we live in a world where society tries to tell young Black boys who they are, what they're supposed to do, what they can achieve, and what they can't achieve. How do you help and coach someone through a young Black male through feeling like, hey, I'm supposed to be doing this, but my heart is telling me that I'm called to do something else?
Yeah, so one of the things I try to do is just to model it for them. One of the things that Morehouse taught me was just the breadth of the Black male experience. And so in that institution, that was the first time I was meeting Black men who, there were like 5 valedictorians in that school, or those who had traveled around the world or from other countries or played instruments. I had random interests that I knew nothing about. And so it allowed me to just appreciate that I don't have to fit a singular mold. And in many cases, our context drives what we think we're supposed to be showing. We don't have a more expansive view, then we don't get to see that. And so for me, particularly in inspiring young men, it's important that they see me be the CEO, but they also see, I want to go home and chill too, or I'm at the game, or you saw me at Roots Picnic last week, and so that I don't feel like I have to be one thing at all times. And so for me, it's about modeling that, but then also embracing them for who they are, right? And so taking interest in what they take interest in, asking questions, forcing them to think through what they think is true right now versus what they want to be true 30 years from now. And so I treat all of them as if like what you dream and what you want is legitimate and valid. And so let's just start there.
So after Morehouse, can you explain your experience at Harvard?
Yep. So I can sum it up in one story. So I'm sitting at the table and we are having a discussion about at-risk youth, code word Black.
Code word Black.
Yep. And so we're reading an article about a young Black boy who grew up in poverty and in a single parent home. And one of my white female classmates says, "Oh my God, I feel so bad for this young man. He's never going to have a chance at life." Wow. And
already
done.
Chose his fate.
Now, these are also people who are going to go into education. So that's like step one. Step two, everything about the boy is my story. And so I don't think, or I want to think she would have more couth than to say it if she knew my story.
Right.
But again, that was her thought. And so that for me summed up, these are these elite spaces that we aspire to, and those elite spaces drive so many of our systems, but they have very negative and kind of deficit-minded thinking of who we are. And so if we're not at those tables, you don't get a Will Hayes who gets to say, hold on, sweetheart. Right. That ain't what you want to say in this moment.
And you know what's so interesting? Because hearing you reflect on that memory and also working with you in spaces where we do have teachers of a lighter hue, and they come into, our neighborhoods and they want to teach, but they have a skewed mindset and perception of what our children can actually attain. How does that impact their ability to effectively teach our children?
I think you can only pull out of students what you believe is in them. And so if you come in and don't think there's much to work with, then there's nothing you're actually pulling out of them. I think the lie was that teachers are somehow making kids this thing or putting onto them something when you're actually just pulling out of them what's already there. And so if you don't start there, then we've missed it.
So that was your experience at Harvard. Was Vanderbilt series similar?
So I think it also has to do with who I was at the time that I'm attending these institutions. So I'm coming straight from Morehouse to Harvard, right? I had 4 years where
you was ready.
It was just my people, right? It was just my people. There were certain things I didn't have to code switch or like explain. And so exactly. I'm also not as confident when I'm walking into that space because I'm not as well versed in navigating that with this very proud Blackness. I think that's the other piece. I now needed to figure out how to fit this very proud Black identity in this white space when it was previously just able to just exist, right? And so in between Harvard and Vanderbilt, I taught for 3 years and was an administrator in Boston public schools. That's a totally different world.
That's not Camden.
That ain't Camden.
And
it
it's
ain't
not Philly.
It's Boston, right? And Boston is its own entity. And so Boston was, I think, the city that like made me. I got my chops there.
Okay.
I did some work in Boston, but I was able to stand on my identity in a way and articulate it and push back on systems so that when I walked into Vanderbilt, it wasn't the same youthful Will Hayes that was walking into the Harvard classrooms. I was much more confident in who I was. I was much more sure of what I knew to be true, and I had experience to back it up. And so I spoke very differently when I pushed back on things.
You had your folding chair.
Oh, I was ready.
Okay. I see that. All right. So, can you share a story of a student that had an impact on you that really sparked your passion and knew that you were in the right space at the right time doing what God had called you to do?
Yes. I believe when I first started teaching in Boston, there was a student named Chucky. And so he has definitely informed how I view the world and my practice. My first year working at the school, there was a major, I would say, gang brawl that was happening down at the train station. There were about 100 kids out there. And he was the center of this. And the police were saying to me, can you just get him and pull him out because he's the reason for this chaos. Mm-hmm. And so in pulling him out, we didn't have the relationship at the time, but he at least trusted me enough to kind of walk away with me. And I walked him home to the local, he was about 2 blocks away in one of the projects that were there. And about 6 months later from that, he was shot and left for dead, shot 4 times outside of his home in his neighborhood. And I became his homebound tutor. His grandmother did not speak any English. She had a bunch of birds, but she was always just so excited for me coming over there, would feed me when I come to tutor him. But in that, we developed a relationship. And what I found was a lot of his anger was not only related to his relationship to his dad, but also he struggled with reading. And so he was resistant to school. And so for me, it really informed how I view children and the respect I give for the lives they're living outside of school and the challenges they face just to make it to school each and every day. They are facing things that we would otherwise use PTO for and call out, right? We take 3 days if we aren't feeling well or something's overwhelming. Kids don't get that privilege.
That's so powerful. It makes me think about the pencil poem. And it talks about a student who says, hey, I woke up this morning and we didn't have heat or we didn't have food. My parents were fighting. I had to take my brother to school. I had to figure all of these adult things out as a child. And when I get to school, the very first thing you ask me is, why don't I have a pencil? And so reframing the mindset of when children are walking into a building or a classroom, instead of first thinking of them as students, thinking of them as people first, because that will have a profound impact in their lives. And I think about how you do that for adults as well, not only students. And so, funny story, when I'm not the most punctual person.
You're late often. That's what you meant to say.
I'm not the most punctual person all of the time. But when I would be late for work, I would send you a text. And the first thing I would say is, hey, Dr. Hayes, I'm going to be late. And one of the most powerful things you did, it was very simple. Before you said anything, you texted me back and said, are you okay? And when you said, are you okay? I felt bad because I was okay. But I also was like, wow. Like before he said anything else to me, he wanted to know the circumstance, which made me late. And so you modeled that for adults and also asking adults to model that for students. But that was big for me because I knew that you didn't just care about me as an educator. You cared about me as a person. And I also would come and when I was late, I would act like I was mad at something. Mm-hmm. So I would come in and I would just be like, I'm not in the mood. Nothing was wrong. I just didn't want you to get in trouble for being late. But because you showed that grace to me, I always remembered it when a kid walked into class late or when a kid walked into school late. Before we look at them in terms of how we see them as students, we have to care about the whole child. And so how, as an educator, have you created the environment where other educators foster the whole child?
I think you said it perfectly. So I don't ask adults to do for children what I don't do for adults, right? So I believe that children are in the care of adults and adults are in the care of the leader. And so what people will also share is, in as much as I care about people and I ask that question, on the other side of that is, well, I'm gonna get it out of you one way or the other, right? And so even my students would say they probably didn't encounter a teacher who cared as much and or who expected as much out of them. And care is the capital we have to actually get the best out of children. The relationship I have with them allows them to trust me enough to go into spaces they're unfamiliar with or uncomfortable, to take risks and take challenges because they know I care and I'm not going to put them in harm's way. And so this is also difficult work. And so adults need to know I care and he's not going to set me up for something difficult or something I can't accomplish and be successful.
You know, that also brings me to reflection of you as my boss, because one thing that I used to get so frustrated with you about, and I would voice this, was that I felt that you always were giving me a task.
Yes.
And before I could complete that task, you were giving me another task.
Yes.
And when I would come back to you to ask you what you thought about my progress or what I was doing or before I made a move, you did not want to give me feedback.
Correct.
And so at first I was frustrated because I'm like, I need to know what you think. And then you finally told me, no, you don't need to know. And you're not asking me because you really need to know what I think. You're asking me because you don't trust yourself. And when you said that to me, first of all.
Yep, dude. You had a little attitude. You wasn't used to somebody talking like that.
Right. I was like, first of all, but then I thought about it. And now looking back on it, you, for me, were a person who helped mold my belief in myself. Because I was good at what I was doing, but I always needed you or someone else to say, oh, this is a good job. This is a good job, Mingo. And so in thinking about just students or people in general, how do you foster people to be able to independently know that the work that they're doing is good without needing constant reassurance? And that's not to say we don't ask people for feedback, but that you're not paralyzed until someone is able to say you're doing a good job, that you just innately know that this is good work and I can move forward.
I think that is cultural. You know who doesn't care if they're doing a good job? People with power and privilege. We are the only ones that feel like we got to get 3 degrees to be qualified for the position. We got to get feedback from 10 different people before the idea is okay and good. And for me, particularly when I'm working with Black leaders, it's about unlearning all of that. When you get into leadership, it is a lonely position, and there are not 5 people that you can get the honest opinion from. And so you do have to be well-versed in trusting your gut and trusting yourself, right? To be able to have a vision and execute on it. And so when I encounter leaders that I feel like I got for a short window, I never thought I had you for a long time.
You said it all the time.
I'm like, you'll be here as long as you're here. I think our paths are supposed to cross for a leadership position that you will have it someday. But in that position, you're going to have to make a decision and stand 10 toes down on your own choice.
And we used to butt heads about that all the time, because I would say, why are you doing this? And you would say, oh, God told me to prepare for you.
Yep.
Your next position. And you said that from like year 1. And I used to say, nobody told you that. God didn't tell you that.
And then boom, look at that. And I would also just say, I look forward to the solution you come up with, because that is an acknowledgement of, you see things that I don't see. You have gifts that I don't have. And so I'm not trying to make more leaders who are just like me. I want you to be well-versed in your own gifts. And so I think people are stressed under my leadership, and most folks don't appreciate.
People are.
Well, I know. I intentionally stress you out.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Stress response is a muscle that we have to work out. And until you are in it and you can wake up Monday and go back on Tuesday and deal with it on Wednesday, then you're not prepared for leadership. I remember this memory is always in my head. You had a little attitude. You were so upset about something. I forgot what it was. And then you went storming off to your room, to your classroom, close your door. So I walked up. I said, you got a problem? You feel some type of way? And so what you don't get to do in leadership is escape conflict or escape, I don't like you, but I still got to lead you. I still got to work with you. And so those are kind of just the ways in which I'm supporting leadership, and they don't even know it's happening until you get into the seat and you're like, oh, wow, okay.
If I didn't have a leader like you, I would not have prepared for this, because you definitely did follow me in my office. And I considered calling HR about that, but, I went against it.
Because I cared. Because I care. Yep.
So, okay, so you mentioned about adults being in the care of leaders and how you coach and mentor educators. Can you share some of that? Because you do lead an organization, you participate in an organization that cultivates leaders of the next generation. And I think it's beautiful because I don't think I've witnessed a space where particularly Black male educators are celebrated, they are affirmed, and they're given the tools that are necessary for them to be successful. So can you talk about that? But can you also talk about how important that is for when they walk back into the classroom with young Black boys and girls?
Yep. I think it's an opportunity for us to have honest dialogue and conversation without the noise of just being in the schools and the noise of positional authority. And so we are having conversations between district leaders and professors and K-12 teachers in ways that doesn't create this false hierarchy that I'm better than you. No, I have different experiences, I have different perspectives, but we are coming to the table equally committed to the success of our children. What I think that creates space for is us to have both conversations that affirm and uplift, but also conversations that hold us accountable and to interrogate the spaces in which we too need to grow and develop to be better for the young people that we're servicing. And so it's a unique space that is not common to have that many Black male educators.
It's a lot.
It was 1,400 this year. So that's one, to just be in that room. Two, for it to be intergenerational. Black men don't often get space to have intergenerational conversation and dialogue where someone 60 is listening to someone 24, 25. Those spaces don't really exist. And even when they do exist with us in the same room, we're in silos. And so it's an opportunity to really stretch into spaces that aren't common. I like to refer to it as a mini family reunion and a homecoming. I think about my time at Morehouse and the ways in which I was able to have more nuanced conversation because we kind of all got it. We know what we're doing here.
That's cool. What is, talk about Black boy joy. How would you define Black boy joy? That's a term that's used, a hashtag, but how would you define Black boy joy?
Black boy joy is putting the big joker down on the last book in a spades tournament. It is feet to grass joy. It is not having a meeting tomorrow. You can just get to sleep late. I think Black boy joy is just freedom and the combination of freedom and pleasure, right? I think that both of those things have been political in nature. Reasons that we needed laws to provide spaces for us to have freedom and to have joy and pleasure. And so anytime that we can experience that jointly, that we are both free and experiencing pleasure, I think that's Black boy joy. And we're doing so in a way that is true to who we are, that I'm not trying to align my experiences or align kind of what I like or how I show up to the next Black man. I get to decide in this space who I am, what brings me joy, and what freedom looks like for me.
That's powerful because being a Black man is not a monolith. And a lot of times people, even we, will do it to each other, right? We have to say that a man has to look a certain way, he has to talk a certain way, he has to have certain interests in order to be considered masculine, right? Or the true depiction of a man. And I think that that really is detrimental to the well-being of men. Because I think that there are some interests that men would explore had they not felt like they have to fit into a mold. And so I often feel like Black men do have to walk around without, what you said, that freedom to just be who they are, because there's always a stigma against it if it doesn't fit a certain, stereotype for them. So is there anything that like you like to do that doesn't stereotypically fit into?
Yeah. So this is funny. I like writing country music. That's random. Oh. Yeah, wait for the album to drop in the fall. You heard it here first on,
This is a Let's Talk About It with Mingo exclusive.
Let's talk about it with Mingo exclusive.
I sing country, so
really?
Yes.
I didn't know you could sing. Jokes. I like to travel a lot. I enjoy ordering DoorDash. I think most of it is actually what I don't like to do that pushes back on limits, right? Okay, so I remember when I was a kid, now I was lazy, but my grandfather told me you should stay in school for the rest of your life because you ain't good for else. And what he meant was, right, he may have just spoke a blessing over my life. I didn't know because I have not left school.
Right.
But I was never just one of those people that like wanted to like be outside or put things together. Yeah, I want to go play outside, but I'm not trying to like, chop wood. I'm from the country, so we are learning to chop wood at the age of 12. So I knew what it was to pull weeds and all those things. So I didn't want that no more. Again, don't want to grow up poor because poor meant needed to be chopping wood and pulling my grandmother's weeds for me. So I didn't want that. I played football because I knew there was social capital in playing football. I was good at it, but I didn't like it.
Football.
People don't ever know that, right? I did it because to be a black man in the South in high school, Friday Night Lights is how you become popular. Culture. Yeah, so I played football. It was not my thing of choice. I played instruments. I played the saxophone, clarinet. I was in musical theater. That wasn't popular, so I put that to the side. And so I think it's been just a navigation of what is most acceptable in the context of whatever space I'm in until I got to a space where I was paying my own bills. I go by on my own flow so I get to show up however I want to show up.
We know the context of society right now. We are in a very hostile situation. And we are under attack. And if you're not white, male, rich, right, you are the other. What would you say to, and not even just young black boys, but what would you just say to the African American community in general to offer hope?
Look at your grandparents. Look at your elders who grew up during the civil rights movement. We are in shock and panic because our generation hasn't experienced this to this level. Right. And we thought we had arrived, right? We thought we were good and the rug was pulled from under us. And so...
We were asleep. Yeah.
Right, we were asleep. We caught us slipping, right?
Yes.
But this is not new to us, right? This is not new to our people. And things have been far more radical, right? Life and death has been true and actual, right? Before ICE was ripping people out of their homes, immigrant or not, they were ripping black people out of their homes as well, right? They were burning down churches. They were bombing schools. And so what we are being faced with is a level of brutality that is quite familiar to our grandparents, right? This is why they were on our generation. We just kind of dropped the ball that we didn't prepare that next generation for something like this. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that particularly older millennials, we kind of grew up in that like balancing period where our grandparents were able to tell us the very real stories and we saw the vestiges of that in the communities we grew up in. This generation is being kind of inundated with it in a way that we didn't prepare them for.
What is a conversation that you think is avoided that we need to discuss?
Ooh. Or
that you would like to see discussed?
So many. I'm sorry, that whistle probably messed the mic up. I hesitate with these things because I never know what the audience on the other side is, who they are. The conversation we need to have is, we need to have a conversation amongst ourselves. That's step one. There's a lot of attention being given to those in authority and position, and we need to better prepare ourselves internally. We are divided. And so we can't go take on these large systems and powerhouse systems if we are divided. I think there are assumptions that we are more normed and we are more aligned on key issues, and we're not. And I think it plays out when we get to the voter booth, right? And people make different choices, either to vote for one way or another or to not vote at all. And we think we're on the same page. I think that we are divided class-wise, we are divided socially, we are divided in terms of rural issues versus urban issues. And until we get on the same page, then we will be ill-equipped and ill-effective in trying to fight that battle.
No, that's real. We need a family man.
We need a family meeting. And I think the other thing that this is, again, I have so many unpopular opinions. We have no respect for hierarchy and structure and authority anymore. We have an American ideal that says everybody's the king, everybody's a leader. And at some point, the crowd got to be quiet while the leader talks. And even if I don't like the leader, I got to follow because we are greater in masses, right? And so right now, we have a platform for everyone to be the leader. and we are not kind of folding in our efforts for one cause.
And historically, that's not
that ain't how we get down.
Culture, yeah.
No, like the thing is, when you think about Black revolutions, they were always centered in churches and schools. That is where the meetings were held. That is where the leaders met. That is where you raise the next generation. And because we have so many churches now with so many different philosophies, our churches in many cases are quite homogenous in terms of social class, our ideology, schools all over the place, right? And so you dismantled what was our most powerful force, which was our unity.
You are a licensed...
Nope.
Okay.
I'm a licensed educator.
Okay. I think you have a calling on your life, but we'll discuss that.
I believe that, and I agree with you.
Amen.
I don't know if the license is the calling. You know, Jesus didn't have one of those either. He had the authority.
He had the authority. Hey, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I am so excited to have you as the first guest of Let's Talk About It with Mingo. I think you need to come back because there are so many things reeling in my head that I want to continue to ask you. And so we got to get you on the books to come back. I know you're very, very busy. But just like you used to volunteer me all the time, I'm going to take it upon myself to volunteer you that you are coming back. And so I thank you for having this conversation with us. Thank you for joining Let's Talk About It with Mingo, as we had an amazing conversation with Dr. William Hayes. If you want to learn more about his work, you can follow him on Instagram at Will to Speak. Again, he is a phenomenal educator and motivational speaker. We thank him for taking the time to talk about the Black male identity, to talk about how important it is to pour into not only young boys, but leaders who walk into schools every day. We thank him for sharing the intersectionality of his life and how it has been used to transform lives. And so we hope to see you next time. Have a good day.